Hold on. Okay, what's good, y'all? It's Bible Stories Revisited. This is not what we're doing. This is just a little, sorry I leaked that. Which one is it? Here we go. Yes, I'm back. We're just doing a little, binge of Believe It or Not. I really like his channel. Another one I'm gonna do a binge on, which will be really good, is Durante Lamar. If y'all haven't checked him out, do that. Yeah. Every time like I see somebody subscribe, it just kind of reminds me that even though this channel, like, I'll do this beneficial for me, it also can be beneficial for other people. And once again, if you're like still in it, it's no, you know what I'm saying? It's no judgment. All this channel is encouragement to think, you know what I'm saying? Freely. Think for yourself. Don't fit into a narrative that people might force on you and stuff like that. Now, this is, believe it or not, the problem with church hurt. A lot of things with people like leaving the church, most of the things that people will cling to is, oh, someone must have hurt them. Or, so church hurt has really become like a saying with people who like have left the church, like, and usually like with one of these videos that we might see, you'll see that a lot of the times that kind of is the case, but it's a lot deeper than that. Like, but from the church's perspective, they don't it's not beneficial to them to say, oh, they actually read the book and found something that they either did not agree with or just they could not make sense of anymore. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I can definitely see this. Now, yeah, I don't have too much more to say. I kind of just woke up and I was like, if I don't do this now, I'm not going to do this. So we're going to tap into this. And yeah, that's pretty much enough yapping for me. Shout out, believe it or not, and we'll see what he talks about.
Wedding, and then while we were down there, my cousin passed away up here in Canada.
R.I.P.
And I also had a birthday and a birthday
happy
party
birthday.
and stuff like that,
Wow.
and a lot of visits from family, things like that. So it's just been all over the
Roller
place.
coaster.
So, but I'm back, and here, this is a video. I read the comments. I know, you shouldn't read the comments, but I do. Especially when a video first comes out. I like to interact with people who support me here, and I really do appreciate the kind words people say, the polite disagreements, and the feedback I receive. But there are a few not so friendly comments that I also receive.
Always.
So I developed a few rules when it comes to which comments I interact with.
Dislike you sound. Yeah, there will be those.
But I end the
I'm going to end on an unapologetically angry note. It's little woke douchebags like you that sleep in the back alleys of the internet, go home and have
conversation when insults start flying.
Trump is doing nothing that is unkind or empathetic. Donald Trump of America? The Trump president.
I will also end it when I feel like there's no...
Can't change the gender. No, sorry, the correct answer was you can change the gender. Thanks for playing, though.
longer a two-way conversation, but someone is...
Wokeism causing more trauma. What do you mean by... Yeah, because y'all do
just
not know
looking
what
for a
woke
chance
means,
to
for
get
real.
through their spiel, or they are obviously not engaging with reality.
Nope.
Like recently, when someone continued to say...
Stop talking politics as a Canadian. You don't know how America works.
that it was impossible for someone to not believe in God.
I mean,
how do you
right
continue that conversation? They are clearly living in a fictional world of their own creation.
We had our fun, now we're back to reality, and I'd like to keep it that way.
But sometimes there's a comment that will get under my skin, and it's not because they were angry, it's not because they were insulting, it's not because they wanted to fight, but there's just something in the wording that doesn't quite sit right. Like this one, a lot of church hurt in the comments. Anyone who thinks the Bible condones cheating has never read the Bible cover to cover. I do understand that while some have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, When pastors do it, it hurts and stings even more. This isn't a mean comment,
goodness.
it's not full of vitriol or hate, but something about it felt dismissive. I get that
Yeah.
when someone disagrees with your religion and points out the hypocrisy in that religion, you're
That's
going to
the word,
say that we're
dismissive.
not all like that. You're going to do the no true Scotsman. I understand that. And I also condone him for admitting that when pastors hurt people, it causes more pain. But I think what got to me the most was the first line. A lot of church hurt in these comments. That's the part that felt the most dismissive. Specifically the term church hurt. And part of that is because it's not usually a term that people who the church has hurt use. It's a term used by people in the church to talk about those who have been hurt by the church. And I think that's a huge distinction. Religions, cults, MLMs, and businesses like to have a lot of words and phrases that only they use. It's a way to feel like you are part of something,
cult.
something bigger, something exclusive, to make you feel like you are part of the team. A Christian may say things like, we're doing life together, or that they are just loving on someone, or they may pray for a hedge of protection or
Loving
traveling
on someone
mercies.
is crazy.
Exclusive language can be a
No,
very
that's
powerful
actually
tool
real.
to keep people in the in-group, and it can be a very powerful tool to deal with the fact that some people are not in that in-group. Like when I worked at a popular coffee shop and we would refer to ex-employees as being promoted to customer. Religious people have always used words like apostate, heretic, infidel,
Being
backslider
promoted to customer.
describe someone who no longer believed or
That's
believed
funny.
differently than them. And now that so many people are no longer afraid to speak up about the pain that churches have caused them, it's no surprise that evangelicals have a phrase to describe what has happened to them.
Healing from church hurt. Church hurt, dealing with church hurt.
Church hurt.
And it's called church hurt.
And I've certainly experienced church hurt.
We're going to be talking about church hurt.
That many of us have experienced church hurt.
Did you
It's
know that
gonna
one
be
of
a
the main
doozy.
reasons why people leave church, why people
Take
go
a shot
from
of hit
church
your
to
bone,
church, why
y'all.
people even walk away from God, is because of church hurt?
Not entirely, but that's what they want you to think. It couldn't be because the inherent word of God is horrible.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for liking and subscribing and commenting and all the other awesome stuff you do because of how awesome you are. I put the links down below for the social media as well as the Patreon and the other links that are clickable, like the merch is one of them.
Cool.
Over here. I'm over here, bud. Yeah.
That's actually a
In a
cool
world
character
that is
does
so offended and so hurt, and really a deconstruction movement that's happened that is all founded on this whole idea that people are just hurt by how the church has treated them.
Church hurt can happen because of our faults, sins committed against us, or failed leadership. Now, sometimes it happens because people are offended.
We're going to hear this word offended a lot, and I'll unpack that in a bit. But I'm sure you're already noticing a pattern here.
I already know
Get
the
offended. We see people that walked away from Jesus because they were offended. Some people in church are just evil and they cause evil. So sometimes it could be us. We're just easily offended. Sometimes there are people in the church that are just evil.
There's a guy by the name of Jerome Gay who wrote a book on church hurt, and he provides this definition. He says, church hurt refers to the pain inflicted by religious institutions, its people, and or its leadership. Pain that distances sufferers from their communities and sometimes from God.
What do we do about church hurt? Here's what church hurt is. Church hurt is pain inflicted by a religious institution
funny.
or by religious people.
It turns out Cyril
Ah! How about a little warning?
has a thing about church stuff.
Since when? Since none of your beeswax.
You got
And reality is that so
remember
many
that show.
people here today
Damn.
have moments
nostalgic.
where you're sitting there and you have believed and bought in and are excited about the community of God, but then somebody hurts you. Some leader let you down. Some person neglected
Lord,
you.
too,
Some people
y'all.
didn't follow back up with you. What do we do with church hurt?
I've heard plenty of stories of entire churches hurting people, and those who refuse to partake also being hurt by that church. I've heard so many stories of pastors assaulting people or grooming kids, and most of the congregation, if not all, side with their pastor. That does happen. But usually it's just one person or a handful of people in a church that are causing the pain. And it's never the whole church, as in all Christians or all evangelicals or all Protestants hurting one individual, because that is pretty much impossible. So that gives people an out. I didn't hurt you. I didn't cause that pain. Most Christians I know are loving and wonderful people, at least to me. It's easy to deflect each story you hear from people and say that is a reflection of that individual that they are talking about. It's not a reflection of the church as a whole. It's the reason the term church hurt exists at all, to minimize someone else's experience. Yes, people have experienced pain. Yes, people have been abused. Yes, people have been assaulted, taken advantage of, used until they burn out. But if I say they are experiencing church hurt, I create a barrier so I don't have to think about that specific pain caused to that specific person. And I don't have to stop and think of the fact that I'm a part of the group that is causing this pain. Church hurt puts it all on them. It's a condition that they have to deal with, not something that any organization or any person has to be held accountable for. It's that person who's experiencing church hurt.
You know what's risky? Letting your son go on that church thing.
Well, her name's Ann, Dad. He's not going on her. Okay, they're just friends.
Tell you this, there is no perfect church. You know why? Because you're involved.
I probably shouldn't put my address.
And because you're involved, people mess it up. And leadership messes it up, whether it's intentionally or not intentionally. And people mess it up because Christians can be mean. Anybody ever met a mean Christian once in a while? Yeah. So the fact is that things are not going to always work out the way you want it to work out.
When we are talking about being hurt by others, there's a couple things that I want us to know. First of all, because we are relational beings, and we, by the way, are all flawed, broken, sinful people.
Here we go with
that means that when we enter into relationship, we are all susceptible to being hurt, and we're all capable of hurting others.
If that's true, that we are all broken and therefore broken people are going to hurt people, then that would be true across all organizations. It's not just the church that would be full of broken people then. It's not just Christians who are broken, it's everyone. But the church would be the one place where at least people recognize that they are broken and are working on bettering themselves, right? So shouldn't there be less abuse in the church compared to other organizations, not more?
If you get a bunch of sinners together who are saved by God's grace, guess what? Eventually, someone is going to wrong you. You get people today talking how they walked away from Christianity because they got hurt by the church. What did you think was going to happen? There are people in churches.
The reality is that many churches attract people who want easy access to children without proper oversight or background checks. It empowers people who believe they are spiritually superior to have control over small groups or church organizations. It relies on volunteer labor, usually using high-pressure tactics to get people to work for them for long hours. There are countless ways that churches create situations where abuse and pain are going to happen. Churches need to reevaluate how they do things and think about how their actions contribute to this pain, but instead they use the excuse that we are broken people. I've quit a few jobs in my life. A few of them because it was a toxic work environment. And it was never a toxic environment just because there were a few terrible coworkers. It was always toxic when management wouldn't do anything about the terrible coworkers or when management was being terrible themselves and causing a toxic work environment. Churches over and over again empower awful people because they are desperate for volunteers, and certain people volunteer because they are desperate for power.
I would have you fired if I had a little more power. Got married with my mother with a mouth of power.
Don't give up on the church because of some crazy people and some crazy experience at one place. Understand, God's still got a remnant of his people that love God, that are all about the purposes of God, that are on the mission of God. There's still some good ones around. Can I hear a good amen, church?
Not some good ones.
There's some good stuff too.
There are some good ones.
The churches have never been perfect.
Still gotta address
Jesus is busy trying to perfect the church.
If Jesus is trying to perfect the church and it's not working, then he's either not actually trying or he's not actually perfect. If he's tried to do something and continues to fail at it, it means by definition, he is not perfect.
But some of us have been hurt in the name of God's love. I want you to know, just because somebody uses his name,
Just because somebody uses the word love doesn't mean it had anything to do with love or God. It just means they were using those words.
I know very few people who say that God hurt them when they're talking about the church. Either they understand that it was people who hurt them and they just want to separate themselves from that possibility of being hurt again while still believing in God, or it's people getting hurt by the church, which caused them to want to take a break from the church, realized all the brainwashing and indoctrination and propaganda they were being fed, and eventually stopped believing in God. It's rarely a Christian hurt me, therefore I no longer believe in God.
I love
it can
my
be
church.
a nudge
I
in that
still love my
direction,
church,
but it's very rarely the whole story.
I can't go back.
And you got to be really, really
I
careful.
can, but you know,
And I just want to say this.
I've peeled back.
Stop
Doesn't
saying,
matter.
I got hurt by God, or I don't trust God, or I got hurt by the church. Use the name of the person who hurt you. And don't just sell out or give up on the church
you're not
because of
gonna
a
stand on
person
that.
or God because of a person.
I guarantee
are
that if
not
you do
gonna
that,
stand.
you would be accused of gossiping
Look at
and
that.
you
Look
would
at
be
that.
dismissed.
That's what I'm saying. I
When it
guarantee
comes
they're
to,
not
like,
gonna
you
stand
know,
on that.
ministry, when it comes to churches, there are wolves in sheep's clothing.
That maybe there's a fox in the hen house, or a wolf in sheep's clothing, or one of the other tricky animals.
There are some people that come to church that are completely fake. In Acts 20:29, it talks about people who come into church that pretend to be shepherds but are like savage wolves. So not only we got immaturity of believers, we got some devil spies in the church. We also got some pastors or leaders who are savage wolves, not shepherds. And so that could make it into a really interesting experience navigating all of that.
Jesus calls these false prophets wolves in sheep's clothing. Notice he does not call them wolves in shepherd's clothing.
In Acts 20:29, it talks about
See how he
people
did that?
who come
See how he
into
did that?
church
See
that
what he
pretend
did
to be
there?
shepherds but are like savage wolves.
I know y'all see what he just did there.
Everybody is always looking for the false prophet behind the pulpit. In 40 years of ministry, I've found
This man is literally separating himself. I'm gonna speed it up just because, you know what I'm saying, this is a reaction. So if y'all want the slower one, y'all can get on your own time. But well, it's literally like, it's y'all. Y'all can't blame me. I'm anointed. Like, bro, like, see what he did there
there are
before
more
he did
wolves
it,
in
bro.
the seats than there are in the pulpits.
That's
Because there are
insane.
more people in the seats than at the pulpit.
Literally.
It's basically Moneyball.
But here's the thing. Even if it
Basically
wasn't
Moneyball.
the true Christians
I
who were
love
doing the
the
hurting,
samples he
even if
puts
it
in
was
there.
the wolves in sheep's clothing doing all the hurting, until churches do a better job of getting rid of the wolves, instead of just shrugging and saying, wolf's gonna wolf, some people are going to stay away from the one place they know the wolves are. And some people are just tired of being sheep.
Sheep walking around in your sheep
Oh
clothing.
my
just thinking of
gosh,
sheep
that
pups.
nigga was
You
cooking.
just read through the pages of scripture. You just see that God uses flawed, broken, ordinary people. I'm so thankful that he does, because that gives all of us the hope that God might use each one of us. But that also means that you shouldn't worship the person God uses. You worship the God of the person. Your eyes are fixed upon Jesus. Listen, I don't want any of you like coming to this church because of me or any other pastor. I want you coming to this church because your eyes are fixed upon Jesus.
This is one of the bigger ones. One that I've talked about many times. Someone says, hey, I had a really bad experience with church, and it really caused me to question things. And someone says, well, you put your faith in people instead of God, when most of the time that wasn't the case at all. First of all, the Bible holds the people who give God and Christ a bad name accountable, not the people falling away from God.
Yep.
Second, just because you were hurt by the church and need to separate from that body for a while doesn't mean you're putting your trust in people too much. It just means you need to get away from those awful people. And third, isn't it the whole point of church that we have people we can trust and rely on? So of course people are going to be disillusioned when that trust is broken. Even if they were holding a pastor or a small group leader or church elder or whatever on too high of a pedestal, that usually just means they fell for a scam. These people use their spirituality and righteousness to prop themselves up, either because this gives them a feeling of power or because they like manipulating people for multiple sketchy reasons, usually having to do with money or sex. And some people are really good at finding targets and gaining trust, to then turn around and blame the people who were scammed instead of offering help, and healing just adds to the pain.
How many people do we have falling away from the faith right now? All because a church hurt their feelings. Now I thought I was done.
Hurt feelings is such a dismissive way to put it. That is on purpose. It puts it back on the person who left. It makes them look like they are just too sensitive and need to grow up.
I thought I was done.
I'm not done. I'm feeling this. Do you know why deconstructionism exists? because discipleship didn't.
It's not that people aren't being discipled. It's just that sometimes when a church has broken you and you step away for a while, the indoctrination starts to wear off and you start to think clearer.
And you got these people more in love with your church than in love with Jesus. And so when the church hurt them, they couldn't even stay committed to Jesus?
It's rich.
Your pastor failed and you failed?
That camera does not like.
Your small groups leader didn't let you have a small group, and you don't like the whole church no more? Not the church that didn't let you have a small group. The whole Big C.
See, now, like, he was already doing it, but he really dragging it, trying to make it seem like it's all on them. Like, oh, see, you didn't get a leader group. You didn't have this on your own. You wanted all these selfish things. Now you want to step away, and it wasn't even about that.
Church is off limits to you now.
Isn't Big C what they call cancer? Yeah, it works. But it's funny that they always go with something like they didn't get a small group or someone was mean to them once, and not that the youth pastor was touching kids and the senior pastor said you have to forgive them and move on. There are so many things that churches have done that have caused so much pain, but they seem to always go with things that sound the most trivial.
You got food poisoning at a restaurant. Did you stop going to restaurants? No, you stopped going to that restaurant.
Don't judge all churches by one church. It's so interesting to me that whenever we get hurt in our romantic relationship, we somehow find enough courage to jump into another one. And if it's a good relationship, we're glad that we did, because if we hadn't done it, then we could have easily missed out on the person that God had for us. In the same way, no matter how many negative church experiences that you may have had, I want to encourage you to continue to try to find the right church for you. Pray and use wisdom and ask God to lead you to the right church, because if you don't, you could very well be short-circuiting your own blessings.
Some men could go on a date with 1,000 women and never meet one they connect with because they just aren't into women. I'm into the truth, and I realized that that's not what churches were offering. I went to so many churches as I was struggling with my faith, but the problem was that I had the blinders lifted so I couldn't see past the faults anymore.
Man.
Do you notice anything different about me? Anything
That's
at
it
all?
right there.
No, you look incredible.
I knew it. Egbert, I'm sorry. You're a very nice man. But I would rather be alone and happy than with you and unhappy.
So don't sit here and tell me that I'm a deconstructionist and I just don't like the church anymore and I don't believe in Jesus anymore. You never did. You believed in your pastor.
Stop.
You didn't believe in Jesus. You believed in your pastor.
That's what you have to tell yourself.
And woe be to the pastor that makes people fall in love with them instead of fall in love with Jesus.
Because my pastor was cool, but I could care less if he was the pastor or not. Dude was alright, but that was not the reason. And dude still does his thing, but when you have the veil unlifted, bro, it's just different. You know what I'm saying? I, went to different cities. I went to different churches, small churches, bigger ones. Ones around the corner from the crib whenever I heard, church music. You know what I'm saying? But I still did my own due diligence to realize that, when I would have conversations with people who weren't in that, it almost felt a little embarrassing that they knew more about it than me. And I'm like, of course, I've been going to church for 20 plus years. And it's there's only a select amount of scripture that I've learned. So I started reading all of it. And when you read all of it, when you see the context of certain scriptures that they highlight and only put in certain contexts and stretch it out in their own way, you just see it. You just see it, and it's hard to fool yourself again. You know what I'm saying?
Listen.
This used to bother me a lot more than it does now. You never believed in Jesus in the first place argument. I would argue against it until I was red in the face, give all my credentials about how much I love Jesus and how much I prayed to him and how much I believed in him with all my heart, and how even when I was doubting, I kept praying and praying because I didn't want to lose my faith and I wanted it to be real. But then I realized that it's not about whether or not I ever believed in Jesus. I can't convince somebody else of what I did or did not believe in. This is about them not wanting to entertain the idea that their faith could ever be challenged. That if
That's
someone
it.
who truly
That's it
believed
right
as much as them could lose their faith, that in itself challenges the value and strength of their belief. So they have to convince themselves that people who have left, people who have claimed that they believed in Jesus or loved Jesus and then walked away, never really did believe in Jesus or love Jesus. Not like them. They didn't have the relationship that I have. They didn't truly believe in Jesus. If that was the case, that would mean it could happen to them. And that's impossible. So instead, they gaslight you and tell you what you believed. They tell you what your convictions were. Also, a celebrity pastor talking about how you worship a pastor is very ironic, when that's the whole goal of a celebrity pastor.
But first, think about the life of Jesus. Those who were closest to him, who were walking with him spiritually, they abandoned him, they misunderstood him, they denied him, they even betrayed him. And there would have been great potential there for church hurt.
Jesus threw over the tables of the moneylenders. He regularly called out religious leaders, and he started a new religion.
Not every offense is a reason to say, that's it, I'm leaving. And if you have a pattern of leaving churches, if you have a pattern of leaving ministries, if there is a consistent sequence of you going to a place, loving it, finding a few flaws, getting a little bitter, allowing someone to offend you, and then leaving, if that's a pattern and you've repeated it 2, 3, 4, 5 times, then that goes to show you that you're not approaching this properly. And I say that again because I love you. I'm not condemning you. I'm not trying to attack you, but this is important that it's brought to your attention for your own good.
See how willing he is to minimize people's experiences, and how all these people are so willing to minimize people's pain.
Flashback. Finding a few flaws, getting a little bitter, allowing someone to offend.
Allowing someone to offend
That
you.
made
See,
me
to
cringe.
offend just means to hurt, to cause pain, or to cause injury. The word used to have weight. That's why we use it. But over time, as words tend to do, there was a shift, and it began to hold less weight. The more people were mocked for feeling hurt or feeling offended, the less weight the word had. The more people who caused pain and wanted to cause pain minimized the people who they hurt. The word offended
They
and
already
offense
messed up that
began to
word.
be used in a mocking
Woke
way.
is cooked,
So even
you
though
know.
they basically mean the same thing, there is a huge difference in connotation between saying, I'm sorry I hurt you, and saying, I'm sorry I offended you. Saying offended implies that it's mostly about the hurt person being too sensitive and too easily hurt. It minimizes their experience.
But what's interesting that I find a lot of times in churches is that people are so offended and hurt and develop resentments over such minor things. And I want to talk about some of that in this video. Now, I recognize that there are major things that can happen in churches which are really bad, that can cause hurt and that can cause devastating effects. I also recognize that there are a number of churches that just aren't good churches, and the fellowship isn't legitimate fellowship. I'm not saying anyone should remain in one of those places. But what I am saying is that there is so much church hurt that takes place all over the place, and often a lot of it is very trivial.
Church is supposed to be a relationship, and sometimes with any relationship, you know when it's over, or you know when it's not going to work. And no amounts of arguing from the other person or demands for justifications will fix it.
I'm sorry, this has got to be goodbye. But we'll always have, Friday.
You understand that one time I went to a church, no one shook my hand. And we complain. And what Jesus is going to do when he looks at us is he's going to say, we're not talking about any of those people. I'm talking about you.
Again, I'm not sure what Bible he's reading, but it's the people who aren't welcoming. It's the faulty leadership that will be held accountable, according to the Bible.
When people offend you, it does go a little bit too deep. You do allow it to go a little bit too deep in the heart. So maybe the people were a little unwelcoming.
I don't like this guy.
But maybe they perceived you as maybe just a little odd, or maybe you're putting off signs that you don't want to be talked to. That could be one thing too. So it doesn't always all fall on the other individuals. Sometimes it falls on us too.
Yeah, have you ever considered that maybe you're just a weird little guy?
Tell them not to go to church because the whole team's doing Our Father, and it's the only physical contact I get all week.
Maybe someone did say something offensive, but they didn't mean to. Or maybe things were a little stuffy. Maybe you were a little rejected. Consider possibly, I know this is going to sound harsh, but consider possibly maybe you did come off a little weird. Maybe you were a little odd, and that's why maybe people were uncomfortable to connect with you. Maybe you weren't being relatable. Maybe they caught on to something that maybe you didn't. That's a possibility. I'm not saying that's definitely it, but at least consider that as a possibility.
It doesn't matter that the Bible seems to imply you are supposed to love everyone and welcome everybody, and that Jesus welcomed the outcasts, even weirdos.
I love church. When we greeted our neighbors, I hugged 3 new people. That's 42 people I've hugged in my life.
Well, do you know how bad I've been hurt? Do you know how many things have happened to me? Do you know the cards I've been dealt? And Jesus will say, you were given access to my Holy Spirit, which is bigger than your past. It is bigger than what has been done to you. It is bigger than the mistakes you've made. You know why so many of us can't let go of our past? We can't let go of the things that have happened to us, the abuses that have happened to us. I'm not trying to be insensitive today. We don't want to let go of those things because they identify us and they work as a really, really good crutch.
Terrible. Take a lap.
Yeah, terrible. not cooking
Oh, come
at
on. How
all.
many of you have ever heard somebody say that? You just don't know what they did to me. Let me see a show of hands. Come on. Do I pray for the rest of you for lying later or now?
Maybe not everybody in his congregation is in the habit of minimizing people's trauma. Or, yeah, maybe they're lying.
You just don't know what they did to me. Now, how many of you have ever said that? Don't put your hands up. You know what I say to that person when they say that to me? You don't know what they did to me? I say, no, you don't know what you did to Jesus.
Nothing, because I wasn't born yet. And also, someone else getting hurt doesn't make me not get hurt. Just like when you say your foot really hurts and someone says their whole leg hurts, the pain in your foot doesn't stop.
An offended Christian is a person that has forgotten what they've been forgiven of. Do I need to say it again? An offended believer is someone who had never even realized or has forgotten what they have been forgiven.
Just remember, he is saying someone who got hurt, someone who is in pain.
An offense is the bait of Satan. It's the pandemic of the people of God. So we have an enemy who wants you to be offended, and he wants you to stay offended so that you might miss all the opportunities that God wants to use to bring healing and growth into your life. See, we got to recognize who the real enemy is. And I want to be really careful bringing that up because I don't want to over-spiritualize this or let narcissistic leaders who are full of themselves off the hook. That's not what I'm saying. But there is an enemy, and it's not a human being.
Loves using that
There's
term.
an enemy behind the scenes trying to divide us and trying to keep us offended. And so he does everything that he can to kill and steal and destroy. And his play is never to collapse the church from pressure or persecution on the outside. Yeah. Because he knows what history tells us, that every time the church has been persecuted or there's been pressure from outside society, the church just grows stronger and more influential in its impact. Now, what he does is he gets behind the scenes and he divides us from within. It just gets you offended.
He says he doesn't want to empower corrupt leaders, but that's exactly what he is doing. When you remove personal accountability and say it was just because the devil is trying to bring you down, you remove an incentive to reevaluate how things are done. You get prayer meetings instead of internal audits. You get spiritual warfare instead of reporting people to the proper authorities.
The devil is out to steal your destiny, to steal your prophecy, to steal your purpose and God's promises, and he wants to blindside you with offense. He wants to blindside you with some bad leadership, misunderstanding, hurt feelings. He wants to blindside you so you forget the prophecies, the promises, and the purpose that God has for you. You must understand there is some spiritual warfare that's involved in that. I know people are, need to be changed. People need to be confronted. People need to grow up, be mature. But I believe the devil uses the church hurt to hit people right in their face. And he wants you to experience shipwreck. You need to keep your faith in God, even if you lost faith in people. Let me say that again. You need to keep your faith in God, even if you lost faith in people.
These people do not have the authority over people they think they do.
That's what I tried. That's literally what I remember. I be taking myself back listening to these because I really be trying to
that's on him.
Think of these, but damn, I just be cringing at most of these now. Like, it's insane.
Holding on to my trauma, letting it be my mama.
Oh, even as a Christian, I would have cringed at this. But it's just like, bro, looking at these sermons, looking at these pastors' talks, I be trying to put myself in the mind of the Christian, but it's just like, when you see it now, it's just like, damn, you just see the mind games that they play. Like, you see it in real time. Like, you see exactly the direction they're about to go, how they're about to flip certain things. And it's like, damn. You just can't ignore it no more. It's crazy I ignored it for this long. But it's like I could have ignored it for longer, but literally, when I had to be alone, I still, you know what I'm saying, I would pray my way through many decisions. And of course I didn't stay towards the church, but I always felt like it didn't matter whether I was at a specific church or had a specific family. It all mattered was my relationship with God, which internally was my relationship with myself, being okay with who I am, the things that I think, and everything like that. So it's like, you just gotta change the frame of the journey that you've been going at. I can't act like I've wasted 20 plus years just being a Christian, only following God, only following, you know what I'm saying, this Bronze Age sex manual. But it's like, in the ways that at least my church framed it, it was a sort of progressive church. So I would always use my prayer as a way to self-talk, and eventually, like, I realized what self-talk and, like, you know what I'm saying, journaling and stuff like that will do. But that's kind of how I started it. So I don't act like my journey has just been like started from the beginning. I just reframe the journey that I'm on. And now I'm so much, like, it's just so much better to navigate, because I know that I can, like, even if I do, like, read that book, you know what I'm saying, just to revisit some things, I can take what I want with my new perspective from the book, and I know it won't control me. But yeah, I always take myself, like, back mentally whenever I see, like, these church things, because I was in these church spaces, like, maybe not like huge mega churches, except for, like, my main church when I was, like, when, like, I had first graduated, and, like, when I was growing up, like, that was, like, probably the biggest church that, like, I attended regularly. So yeah, and it was sort of like
Come on now.
this type of vibe, like the green screen behind and
And they
stuff.
start identifying with that stuff, and they hang on to it, and they walk around carrying it with them, and that's all they're all about is their trauma. Talk about what happened to me. It was painful. It was bad. How I hurt, and I'm a victim. And Jesus died for the church. Let's move on and get to the place of being healed in church.
You are allowed to focus on your own healing and your own
Literally.
timeline. You are allowed to admit
Yep.
that you've been hurt. You do not have to justify that hurt to anyone. If someone leaves an
bro,
abusive relationship,
facts.
it doesn't mean that they are letting that trauma control them because they don't want to get back into that relationship again. It just means that they don't want to get hurt again. If they look for red flags in new relationships, that doesn't mean they are letting trauma be their mama. It just means that they have learned something from their past.
Come
It's
on.
also not up to an outside person to tell someone to get over their trauma.
Now, I want to ask you a question.
That's the
What do you think
thing.
this
I
is?
would try
If
to
you've
make
been
myself
genuinely
feel
mistreated,
guilty
do you have the
about
right to be
not
offended?
moving on from things that I
Yes,
needed
you have the right
certain
to do
time
anything.
to move on
You have the
from.
right
It's
to go to
crazy.
hell and burn in a lake of fire and be eaten by worms forever, and God will protect your right if that's what you want to do. So yes, you have the right to
The
be
good
offended.
old
But if you want
hell
to walk in the
thing.
presence of God, if you want to walk in the blessing of God,
Yep.
you do not have the right to be offended.
Stop
I'll go
it.
to hell. But I swear I'll bring you along for the ride.
Yeah. I
This
guess I'm going
abuse
to
stacked
hell.
on top of existing abuse. Sure, you have
And
trauma.
man,
Sure, you have so much pain.
that's
You
something
get
I
over
wouldn't
it or burn
take
for
too.
eternity
Like, I would
replaced with
literally
wailing
act
and gnashing
like,
of teeth.
no, I
Saying,
can't be offended.
I'll follow
My
Jesus
feelings
on my
can't
own.
be hurt.
It's just better that
I'm
way. I don't have to
practically
deal
a
with the
robot.
hassle of people.
Like,
That's a
no,
lot
that's
like you
not what
saying
I
to my
am.
wife, Lindsay,
I'm a person.
you know what, I really don't like our arguments and stuff. Our marriage just works so much better when you're not around. Like, that's just not going to fly. And yet that's the logic that we use to talk about Jesus and his church.
What a terrible analogy. The church is supposed to bring you closer to Jesus. The church isn't
Like,
Jesus. It's more
come
like
on.
if you were seeing a marriage counselor and every time you went to a session you got punched, and then you realized that, hey, maybe that's not the healthiest way to improve my marriage.
Come on.
And then you remember, have I actually met my wife for real, or is the marriage counselor just telling me she's real?
Now, I am not advocating for abuse. I'm not saying.
That was a hilarious
Doesn't make your
analogy.
message
Oh my
sus at
gosh.
all.
But I am saying that we should make room for people to
Here
be
this
sus.
guy
I'm not
goes
advocating
again.
for abuse. I'm not saying you should allow people to abuse you.
Having to clarify that doesn't make your message sus at all.
But I am
Right?
saying that we should make room for people's mistakes because there will be mistakes. People.
That nigga started out like a Kanye tweet. Like, I'll start this out by saying I've hit. Like, what? You're gonna start out by saying that? Kanye went on like a crazy rant. Oh, what's new? Like, literally. And one of the tweets bro showed me, he said, I'll show you an example of racism. Why would I want to continue listening to you? You clearly,
And those
yeah.
who love you the most and know you the most will hurt you the most. Why? Because you're connected. It's a deeper connection.
You know that's a lie, right? Just for anybody
That's
who's listening that
straight
doesn't know that's a
up
lie, that's
cap.
a lie. I believe this for far too long.
Man.
I believe that it gave me an excuse to be shitty to people around me when I had a bad day, or I had bad anxiety, or I needed to vent. But it's not true. If you love someone, you work on yourself so you
Let's-
don't continually treat them like crap. If
Facts.
you love someone, you treat them like you love them. Yes, we are more likely to lash out at people we are close to, but that doesn't mean we get to. You still have to work on yourself. You still have to stop doing that eventually, or you're going to lose that person.
Yep.
You are allowed to set boundaries when people treat you terribly, even if they say it's because they are lashing out at those they love. You are allowed to say no to that. You are allowed to take care of yourself. If people at church or work or your friend group or your family are constantly hurting you, it's okay to get yourself out of that situation. You don't have to convince yourself that it's because they love you that they are hurting you.
You always hurt the one you love.
Bro.
And it's the same with God.
Straight
You don't mess with
facts,
his kids,
man.
and you don't mess with his
I
bride.
needed to hear that.
He will
Damn.
take care of people that mess with him.
Damn,
That's
I
why
needed
Paul
to
says
hear
this
that
way,
one more
do not-
time. One more
When I had a
time.
bad
Yeah.
day or I had bad
Bro, like you can see niggas needed to. I'm sorry, black, but people needed to run that back, y'all. Bro,
anxiety
like
or I needed to vent. But it's not true. If you love someone, you work on yourself so you don't continually treat them like crap. If you love
Come
someone,
on.
you treat them like you love them. Yes, we
Facts.
are more likely to lash out at people we are close to,
Of
but that doesn't
course.
mean we get to. You still have to work on yourself. You still have to stop doing that eventually, or you're going to lose that person. You are allowed to set boundaries when people treat you terribly,
Exactly.
even if they say it's because they are lashing out at those they love. You are allowed to say no to that. You are allowed to take care of yourself. If people at church or work or your friend group or your family are constantly hurting you, it's okay to get yourself out of that situation. You don't have to convince yourself that it's because they love you that they are hurting you.
Come
You always
on.
hurt the one you love.
Come on.
And it's the same with God. You don't mess with his kids, and you don't mess with his bride. He will take care of people that mess with him. That's why Paul says it this way: do not take revenge, my friends, but
Good old
leave
Paul.
room for God's wrath. Those two words right there need to be underlined in your Bible. Leave room, leave room, leave room. You know what that is? It's you got to release control of the scenario and let God come in. Leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, "It is mine to avenge; I will repay," says the Lord. So we have a choice. We leave room, and if we leave room, God steps in. And if we don't leave room, then we're in control of it. Then God will never step in. And I'll tell you, God can deal with them better than you can deal with them.
The only problem is that his wrath doesn't seem to kick in until after you're
Yep.
dead. After people have already been hurt.
Yep.
It never really stops the hurt from happening.
Nope.
I'm not saying take revenge in a physical way, but it's okay to blast somebody on social media, to warn people about them, and to do what you can to stop them from causing pain to other people. If churches held people accountable, if churches vetted people before giving them power over other people, then maybe we wouldn't have to do this. But in the meantime, revenge. Leaving vengeance to God only leaves more people injured. All this does is silence their victims.
You know what the big problem is? We've categorized sins in the church. We have the big ones: adultery, murder, witchcraft, stealing. Then we have what we call weaknesses: strife, unforgiveness, gossip. Gossip. You know what Proverbs 6 says? These 6 things the Lord hates, and the 7th is an abomination. Do you know adultery is not in that list? I am not justifying adultery. The Bible says you practice it. You'll not
Why did he
inherit the
mention
kingdom of
that
God. I'm not
then?
talking- But you know what I find interesting? You know what the 7th one
snitching
on
on
that list is that
himself.
God says is an abomination? Those who sow discord among brothers.
Guarantee he be cheating.
Gossip. So this is what I want to say. Treat gossip the way you treat adultery, you'll probably get free. But if you see it as a weakness, oh, it's getting quieter in here. Treat unforgiveness the way you treat murder, and you'll probably be free.
Remember earlier when Timu Kevin Bacon said to name the
Timu
person?
Kevin
God said, I got hurt by God. I don't trust God. I got hurt by the church.
Yeah, like, let's see it now.
That's gossip, and that's bad too.
It's important not to fall for gossip. It's important not to try to destroy this person's reputation or life.
What's really important here is the abuser's reputation. Why are churches so against gossip? Especially when it comes to their own abuses. Because it's easier to sweep things under the rug if you can keep people silent.
Is a tough one, and that is to resist the urge to speak negatively about that church or that church leader. And so whenever we are bitter, angry, and frustrated with a church, it's easy for us to find ourselves slandering the church or slandering the leader, and speaking negatively about that person to someone else who may be interested in going to that church, and as a result, without even knowing it, the enemy is using us to cut off and short circuit the blessing that God may want to do in and through that person's life in that church.
Or we're not cutting off a blessing, we're cutting off a trauma from happening to someone else. These are the people you should warn.
It's crazy my automatic, like, I've only been away from, like, I feel like I've completely deconstructed, like, for a full year. But, like, it's still crazy that, like, I'll hear stuff that I don't agree with. And just the fact of me just, like, being in a church setting, I'll just automatically, yep. It's like, no, I don't even agree with that. But it's just so embedded in me, like 20 plus years of me just sitting in church knowing, oh, that's my cue to agree. Yeah. Uh-huh. Woo. You gotta say it so you know you agree. Like, that's literally some of the stuff that, like, was embedded in me, like, when I was growing up from, like, my stepmom and stuff. They said, you can't just sit there and nod your head. You have to out loud agree. And they didn't even know that is a mental thing that, like, hardwires it into your brain to, like, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. But, like, yeah.
Really golden.
It's crazy. I just noticed
only
that.
Causes more pain.
Things have changed around here. We have talking sessions throughout the day. We even have a talking room where students are encouraged to go in and talk to their heart's content.
Sounds like fun. First thing you said all day.
And I get it. When I think about people being hurt at church, I'm thinking about abuse, whether sexually or mentally or verbally. And these pastors have minimized it to be about more trivial things like not shaking hands or not letting someone become a small group leader. But the fact is, it doesn't matter what scenario they are running in their head. What matters is the message someone who has experienced abuse is hearing. When they hear over and over again that it's just because people are flawed, it's because they love you that they hurt you. It's evil to talk about it. It's evil to do anything about it. They are going to internalize this message, and they are going to get to a place where they accept what is happening to them.
Here's what Paul tells us. He says you need to make an allowance for each other's faults and forgive each other. For anybody who offends you, remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must. Look what he says. You must forgive each other. Like, it's not an option. So if the church has hurt you, a leader's hurt you, a pastor's hurt you, a friend has hurt you, a coworker's hurt you, it is the command of God that we forgive others.
We as Christians must grasp this truth, that forgiveness is not an option, it is a command. If you are a Christian, we do not have the choice to remain angry, bitter, and unforgiving towards others.
If forgiveness is not an option, it's meaningless. It only allows people to do horrible things, knowing they are owed forgiveness no matter what. It only allows the victim to be made to feel guilty for the way they respond to their abuse.
You pray it every day in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us for our trespasses the way we've forgiven those who have trespassed against us. Do you want God to forgive you the way you've forgiven those people that have hurt you? Well, the truth is, that's the way you will be forgiven. Because God has placed his love in our heart, and we have the ability to forgive, just like Jesus did when he hung on the cross and said, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing. Isn't that good news? I'm preaching myself happy right now, Pastor Rob. I'm so excited right now. I can hardly stand it.
You know that people are going to hurt you, right? In life in general. And if you live your life out following the Lord with a group of people at church, eventually, even though generally people want to love you and do good to you, eventually someone's going to have a bad moment and you're going to be involved and you're going to get hurt. And guess what God calls you to do in that moment? Forgive. Forgive. As you have been forgiven.
You do not have to speak well of your abuser. You do not have to stay silent about your abuser, even if they...
Side quest. I know y'all probably don't even smoke like that. I just had to ask my DoorDasher. It's like, if you give me a wrap, a leaf, I'll, because he's grocery shopping right now. If you can get me a leaf, I'll Cash App you, or I'll just tip you $5. Would that be a good deal? I think that's a pretty good deal, because he's at a Food Lion. So, if you're in Virginia, and because Food Lions are like Walmart, neighborhood Walmarts or something like that. It's like a little grocery store like that. Almost every Food Lion has a vape or like wrap store right next to it. So it should be pretty simple for him to do that. We will see what he does. Maybe not in this video, but we're doing a binge. So next video, that's probably when the food's going to get here. But yeah, I just wanted to say that out loud so I could clear my head to listen. You know what I'm saying? Kind of suck at multitasking right now. Just hit the bong.
Forgive. Forgive. As you have been forgiven.
You do not have to speak well of your abuser. You do not have to stay silent about your abuser, even if they are a religious authority figure.
Forgiveness is not something that you
Not
do
this guy again.
when someone offends you. Forgiveness is the condition of your heart long before you're offended.
It's kind of weird to quote yourself with fancy graphics like that while you're saying it.
Forgiveness. You give before it's even happened.
I guarantee you that is not the etymology of that word. Nope. It comes from the Germanic fra and refers to away or forth. So the word comes from giving away. as in you give away your grievance with that person. If it referred to before, it would more likely have an E at the end of for.
It's living in that state where you're ready to let things go. Not compiling a list, not compiling criticisms, not putting everyone through a system to see if they pass the test and allowing them to be connected with you based upon whether or not they pass that test that's going on in your head, but being ready to forgive, which means we will be offended. Jesus said 70 times 7. That means again and again and again. Why do you have to forgive someone more than once for one offense? That's because sometimes it's not the offense, but the memory of the offense that reoffends us. And then we have to forgive them again once we've remembered it. We forgive them, we move on, it comes to memory, seeds of bitterness start being sown, and we have to remember in that moment, 70 times 7.
Or maybe you're not okay with
for
it.
the memory of what they did.
No, 70 times 7 was not referring to forgiving the same offense. It was referring to forgiving the same person. It's dangerous either way, but this guy needs to work on knowing stuff
Literally.
instead of just sounding like he knows stuff.
That's what pastors kind of, not all pastors obviously, but that's kind of what pastors kind of got to do.
And starts a brand new chapter of your life. But if it's expected of you, it only adds to the trauma, because some hurts don't go away on their own. Some hurts require therapy. Some hurts require that you do hard work to better yourself. When you say, oh, okay, I forgive you, when you can't really forgive them in your heart, and then you have to see them all the time, or even just know that they're out there possibly hurting other people, that is going to eat away at you. That is going to make you feel even worse. I think that this is one of the most toxic teachings of Christianity, and it has caused far, far too much pain. When someone tells us that we hurt them, we have a couple options. We can get defensive, we can justify our actions, we can minimize their pain, we can trivialize what they're saying and make them feel bad for getting hurt or offended, or we could listen to them, evaluate ourselves, and maybe even work on ourselves. Churches and pastors don't seem to be doing that. They need people to come to church. When I first moved to Toronto, I got a job at one of the 3 major cell phone companies in Canada. My job was retention. So basically, if somebody called to cancel their service, it was my job to stop them from canceling their service. I was there to convince them that actually our service is the best in Canada, with the best network in Canada, and that they're just going to want to come back later. I was the one who had to find a way to keep them as a customer. And I was terrible at this job and did not last very long at all. Churches, however, are working really hard on retention right now, and part of the strategy is to deflect and to put the blame back on the people they hurt, to minimize it by calling it church hurt, to guilt you into coming back, to make you feel like you have to justify your pain to them. But the thing is, your life belongs to you, your decisions belong to you. If you love church and want to keep going back, you have every right to do so. If you decide that you never want to step foot into church again, that is also completely up to you. They can threaten you with hell, but the good news is hell is not real. And even if it was, according to the Bible, they are way more damned than you are.
Facts.
Thank you so much for making it this far. If you know somebody who may benefit from it, send it their way. And as always, I love you all so, so much.
Work, work, work. Sky Moon. Wow.
Good sights.
I'm the king of the world.
King of the world. Yes, sir. If y'all liked that, like it. And yeah, we're gonna keep it moving next video. Shout out to those who watched this. If you found it beneficial, I guess like the video. This is kind of just the venting channel or whatever, but hey, I felt like I should do a quick content or something for y'all. Believe it or not, be spitting them facts, as you can see. We gonna keep it moving on, and yeah, let's get it.